camel-wearing, fanny pack-loving mistake that came from the 90s, there were some incredible moments and contributions made. Biggie dropped his first album, a small company named Google hit the web, and the Fresh Prince moved all the way from West Philadelphia to Bel Air. And for sport compact enthusiasts, Honda created one of the most sought-after badges to ever find its way onto a car. Truth be told, that same badge was so desired, it also found its way onto a lot of cars that weren't Hondas. And of course, we're talking about the Honda Type R. So join us as we walk down memory lane and reminisce on the history of the Type R. In 1988, Honda was getting tired of having Europeans flexing all over their face with their well-known superior supercars such as the Porsche and the Ferrari. The goal was to create a high-performance sports car that was all their own, combining exceptional handling, power, and reliability, all with a comfortable and refined driving experience. And I think we can all agree that if there's one thing that Mr. Miyagi taught us was that the Japanese never back down from a fight. So with determination and a shot of pre-workout, Honda introduced their new sports car experimental prototype dubbed the NSX. Now, grit and moxie doesn't guarantee you a grand slam the first time up at the plate. The same thing held true for Honda engineers. In February of 1989, legendary Formula One driver Ayrton Senna was enlisted almost on a whim by Honda engineers to provide input on the performance of the NSX prototype. While he was highly impressed that Honda could develop a car that was just as capable as its European counterparts, he also felt that something was missing. His comments? "I'm not sure I can really give you appropriate advice on a mass production car, but I feel that it's just a little fragile." While a bit shocked with Senna's comments, his finely tuned skill set felt something in the car that most others couldn't. Honda R&D would go on to fine-tune the NSX's suspension and increase the chassis stiffness by 50%. So why are we talking so much about the NSX in the history of the Type R? Well, it's simple. The 1992 NSX-R was the first Honda vehicle to ever earn the Type R Type Racing badge. From that moment on, the Type R badge would only be given to the highest performance variants of select Honda models. And to earn that badge, Type R vehicles typically have to have increased power, enhanced handling, more responsive driver feedback, different interior accents, improved aero bits and pieces, and other track enhancing goodies, such as larger brakes, limited slip differentials, and smiles for days, my friends. And let's not forget to mention the amount of jealousy that comes from all your friends that happen to buy the base versions. In the Type R line, there have only ever been 4 notable models that have worn this badge of honor: the NSX, the Accord, the Integra, and of course the Civic. Some of these were labeled as Hondas and others Acuras, depending on where the car was sold. In total, there were 10 different generations of the Type R. 5 generations of the Civic Type R, 2 generations of the Integra Type R, 2 generations of the NSX Type R, or the NSX-R, and 1 generation of the Accord Type R, which was really only found in Japan and Europe. Now, it wouldn't be a Koenig video if we didn't mention some of the aftermarket wheel fitment options that these generations could use to keep the cars planted. So pay attention to your screen as we move through some of these vehicles, because we're going to give you some wheel fitment factoids. So here in the States, we only received the DC2 Integra Type R, the FK8 Civic Type R, and of course the FL5 Civic Type R. Some may argue that the Acura RSX Type S we received here is basically the same as the Honda Integra Type R that was in Japan, but this is one of those cases of close but no cigar, because the Type S may have had the same K20C engine and 6-speed transmission on the surface, but it catered to a more comfortable ride. The DC5 Integra Type R was a much more extreme car with stiffer suspension, Recaro seats, Brembo brakes, various exterior and interior differences, and let's not forget its signature and lusted after crinkle-coated red valve cover. So in summary, it's not the same car. However, the DC2 Integra, that Acura branded over here, was the Japanese superhero that we all needed in our lives. Let's be honest, it wasn't only a great looking car, but it also inspired so many Integra LS owners to build clones that could never stack up to the dollar amount or the pureness that the actual Type R brought. Now, comparing the EK9 that we didn't get but we wanted Honda, the DC2 was given a little bit more of a torque bump due to the fact that they changed the displacement. They went from the 1.6 liter 8,400 RPM redline B16 to the 1.8 liter 8,000 RPM redline B18C. We'll leave it to the forums and the keyboard warriors across the internet to debate which engine was actually better. But then there was a long absence of the Type R vehicles here in the US, all the way until we got to the FK8 Civic Type R, which arrived in 2017. So what changed in 2017 that allowed Honda to reintroduce the Type R vehicle back to the US? I suppose this is a little bit speculative, right? The US certainly did have a love for performance-oriented vehicles. I mean, WRX, STI, Evos, GTIs, 370Z, even the Nismo versions. Hell, Ford even had a Focus ST and an RS model. Now, these models also probably quelled one of the concerns that Honda initially had, which is that Americans couldn't live without comfort. Now, when it came to the FK8, without too many special accommodations for just the US versions alone, things had changed since 15 years prior. Global emission standards were becoming a thing, not just relative to one region or one country at a time. There had to be some sort of water cooler talk going around in Honda HQ with people actually feeling that the performance image that Honda once had was seriously slipping. I mean, remember at this stage, there's no NSX, there's no S2000, and only a Civic Si is left to write home about. But man, when the FK8 dropped, what a game changer. I mean, this was the turbo car that most had been waiting for a long time, especially in the US. It was a serious game changer. I mean, this was the turbocharged Type R the US has always dreamed of. It was 306 horsepower, 295 foot-pounds of torque, it had a 7,000 RPM redline, and a seriously aggressive look. Brembo brakes, all the specialty interior, exterior pieces that we wanted, we needed, and of course a turbo. Did I mention it had a turbo? Because if you didn't know, it had a turbo. Now, if you're like me, turbo doesn't just mean turbo. It also means more boost, more mods, and more power. And that's why a turbo car can be so much fun, especially to own, where it makes good power in a stock form. Now, the FK8 was an amazing performance car on and off the track. Real racers pushing the car, well, they found its limits, and they found some serious issues, especially heat issues, that boiled up. And the pun is intended here, folks. But the aftermarket was able to sort that out. There's one thing that tripped me out about the FK8, and there was one thing that I was hoping for before it had actually been formally released. So I was personally hoping that the car would be all-wheel drive. Now, I understand that this goes against the Type R legacy that had predominantly been built around the front-wheel drive platform, but the offensive thing to me, the real thing that set me off, that put me on hinge, was the fact that it came with a 20 by 8.5-inch wheel. Honda, what the hell was that? They looked off base, the tire was small. It just looked like the car was anemic in the wheel well. And for some, that meant that there was some downsizing that had to be there to make the car look right and also drive better. But don't worry, if you're like me and the wheel well thing bothered you too, Honda has your back, because in 2022, Honda would go on to release, in my opinion, the best Honda Civic Type R ever. The FL5 Type R now comes with a 19.9.5. This is the widest wheel that had ever been placed on a Type R. The release of the FL5 came with a number of improvements and refinements to help mature the car and retain that Type R heritage. So what was Honda's goal with the FL5? Here's a quote that came directly from them. While complying with all required specifications and regulations, the FL5 was developed as the ultimate sports car customers can enjoy as a street legal racing car. That's a pretty bold statement, especially from Honda themselves. So the horsepower was bumped to 315 horsepower, and while it featured the same K20C1 that was in the FK8, revising the cooling routing, improving the airflow through the coolers, adjusting the programming of the conditions of the fans coming on, and even doing some moving of the placement of the fans that were behind the turbo. In addition to this, Honda had increased the FL5's chassis rigidity, improved the track width, and added an updated turbo to increase performance and reliability. Now, for all of those that want to argue that the FL5 was not the best Type R ever, let's think about this. The FL5 went on to reset the Nürburgring's record for the fastest time on a front-wheel drive vehicle. So regardless of how you feel about Hondas or which one is the best Type R badge-wearing machine, the legacy that Honda has created with the Type R designation places them deep into the automotive enthusiasts' hearts. All right, so let us know what's your favorite Type R. Throw the answers down below. If you like this video, smash that like button and don't forget to subscribe. That's it. We will catch you on the next one.